Stop taking advice from people that are not successful in the things that you are trying to do. I repeat, stop taking advice from people that have no success in the field of where you're trying to go and what you're trying to accomplish. I'm going to keep it all the way real. This video, not directed at any particular person. Again, it is not directed at any particular person. However, if you feel strongly about what I'm saying, by all means, do something about it. Okay? Because I wanted to make this video, for the most part, just to share a bit of my experience and to share how I feel about certain things as far as when you're coming up in whatever industry that you're trying to do, whether maybe you're trying to be the next content creator, maybe you want to make anime and manga related videos, or maybe you're trying to do music, or you're just trying to create content in general. If you feel like, this is something that you're trying to embark on, a new journey, or you're just trying to navigate through the journey that you're in, then this video, it might be for you. Because just being honest, during my time of doing all of this stuff, I want to stress that I've had a lot of success at the very least on the YouTube side of things. Not trying to flex or whatever, but take a look at the stats. Almost 500 million views on YouTube. And I think something that correlates and something that maybe some content creators or some people in general forget along the way after they've had success, or don't know for that matter, maybe you haven't experienced success, is the fact of, well, with my journey, I've, for the most part, have always been doing it by myself. I've always been essentially, whether it be being a solo artist, whether it be a content creator, I always did it by myself. I never, coming up when I was doing my videos early on, in my room, no structure at the time when I was doing my YouTube stuff. There was no necessarily blueprint or anything like that. And I did it by myself. The subscriber count, whatever you want to, at this point, subscribers on YouTube is essentially like a vanity point. It helps to push your videos, but for the most part, subscribers is not necessarily what it was 10 years ago to where it is now. But also I did achieve a certain level of success subscriber base wise. So I kind of know a thing or two about this in terms of the fact that, again, my success never came from, the YouTube space, depending on anybody or anyone's advice. Every video that I ever made, every title I ever did, every thumbnail I ever did, every description I ever did, every piece of content that I ever created wasn't somebody telling me, yo, dog, review those Naruto chapters. Yo, dog, make that for Never News. When I created my news segment, in case you're new here, I had for the longest time, and pretty much still, because for whatever reason, most people are scared to try new things or try and be the first to do something. Everybody just wants to repeat other formulas. But the Forever News segment, till this point, to this day, still hasn't been replicated properly. Like some people, they do news, but the Forever News segment, for example, about an hour long, more or less, of talking about multiple anime stories and whatnot, was me just figuring it out myself and coming up with something that I found fun, passionate. I was, passionate about this stuff. I'm passionate about this stuff. And ultimately, I did it by myself. Because oftentimes, when you're coming up in whatever industry that you're trying to break into, you will come across people that, whether they are a mentor or they want to be a mentor, or they want to be, your sensei, so to speak, or whatever the case may be. And I'll be honest with you, throughout most of my journey, just being honest, my success always came from betting on me and my ideas. And not to say that my ideas are better than the next person, although just keeping it real, I feel like my ideas have been pretty grandiose and pretty great to this particular point. To this day, many of the ideas that I came up with or thought of or pioneered like a quadrillion years ago are still the same ideas that are being recycled to this day. And these ideas weren't, given to me. These ideas weren't hinted at me. These were ideas that I came up with on my own. I didn't have advice. I didn't take advice, whether it be even in a lot of things in life in general. As long as you understand that you have common sense, so to speak, which I know common sense ain't so common, but as far as common sense, just to be understanding of like, yo, this is the right thing to do. Don't do that. As far as like try and be a good person. I think that should be a commonality for anybody whatever you're doing in life, right? Be a good person, whatnot. As long as you have those aspects, create. It's that simple. Create, and don't worry about feeling like you need to take somebody's advice, because 9 times out of 10, the advice that they're going to give you, yeah, if you appreciate it, whatever, you could hear them out, you can, take it in, but it's always better to just bet on yourself and bet on what you feel like you want to do. 9 quadrillion times all of my successes usually have came from not listening to the next person, not listening to the piece of advice from this one or that one. It was from me saying, no, but this is what I want to do. This is what I feel like I should go with. Not because somebody hinted this or whatnot. The successes that I truly had, the true successes, the Forever Newses, the, big 3 generation where, I was pretty much the top dog of talking about Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach. Those came from me betting on myself. Back when people were making fun of, like, you're talking about, comics and cartoons on the internet. Back when, people would make fun of, like, yo, you talking about that rubbery pirate series? Like, what are you doing, dude? I still was like, that's cool. Laugh now, whatever you want to say or whatnot. And I bet on myself, and my successes came from that. Because you can run into many people in this world that they'll give you advices. They might even give you some promises of like, yo, just trust me, bro. Trust me. If you follow my lead, it's going to lead you here. And at the end of the day, if, let's just say, your goals don't go particularly to the way you want, you're going to end up looking at them possibly with some sort of eyes of resentment. I don't think you want that, right? You would prefer to, whether you win or lose, that you do it on your own merits. That way there's no room for regrets. The only regrets that you could possibly muster is maybe like, yo, damn it, I should have did it this way, or maybe I should have did it that way. Not that, hey, I listened to this person. Because like I said, I've done YouTube for a long time. I've dabbled in, and I've been in doing music and writing music for a long time. And there's a lot of people that you'll come across that, they'll give you advice or they'll give you a guidepost, but it's never really, in my world, in my story, never really been as effective as any time that I ever bet on doing what I felt was the right thing to do, go the right way I want to go, whether it be creating ForneverWorld to begin with, whether it be doing the music stuff, like even with my music. Granted, as I improved in my musical journey or whatnot, yeah, the music got better. That's a fact. But my biggest success, and to this day, the music that gets the most traction still is from some of my earlier work. Now, granted, you could throw the argument that that's just natural, that usually any artist, their first album is always going to be revered as that's the one or whatever. Personally, I think my latest stuff is great or whatnot, but I say all that to say that, again, all of the insane successes, all of the biggest highlights I've ever had in my career in YouTube and music and everything was from me, was from betting on this person right here, this person's ideas, this person's ambitions, because you usually have your path, right? Like everybody has their path as far as which way, and there's multiple ways you could go, but your story is your story. It's not your sensei's story. It's not your mentor's story. It's not the big homie story. That's your story. So if you start, mixing up yeah, man, I want to go this way, but you're listening to big homie, or you're listening to the sensei or the OG or whatever you refer to them, and you constantly are going the other way, now you're mudding what was your story and what was your ambition, your ideas and your goals, because you're listening to somebody else. Yeah, sometimes advice is great, but that don't mean that you got to take other people's advice. In fact, I would applaud you as long as you feel like your advice or your thoughts or your ideas are the winning ticket, to always bet on what you feel is best. So long as you're not harming anybody, so long as you're not doing anything that you feel is immoral or morally wrong, go with that. Just go with that, because sometimes you'll have people even that, they'll give you advices and even have promises attached to those advices of yo, I promise you, dog, do this and it's going to happen. And it's not their life that is in, or their goals or their ambitions or their dreams that is hanging in the balance. It's yours. That YouTube channel that you wanted to start, that record that you wanted to record, that whatever it is, that's yours. So if you listen to somebody else and you don't do that, or you want to open up this YouTube channel, or you want to do that, whatever it is that you're trying to do, listening to yourself is the winning ticket. Listening to the ideas of the person that inhabits that body. You know what I'm saying? That's the winning ticket, in my opinion. Again, I want to stress one more time, this isn't directed towards anybody in particular, because some people might feel like, yo, I gave homie advice, or, I was, this isn't towards you. However, if you feel that way, by all means, do something about it.